Today we will be going over Gargoyle firmware, which is a firmware for routers to use to open up more features that maybe your stock firmware on your router doesn't have. Although firmware for routers has been getting much better lately, so you might not have a need to upgrade to an alternative firmware, but if you do, I'm going to walk you through Gargoyle, which is the firmware that I use on my router. I'm going to log into my router by typing in the name of my router, which is router, and that works because I just realized that's it's not a very creative name, I realize, but for organization purposes and knowing what device is what, it works really well. Um, that works because my router is doing DHCP, so I give all my devices names, and then it's easier to interact with them. I'll show you how to set that up. So here we are at the login page of Gargoyle. You can see this is the IP address of my computer. It tells you that right there, and we're just going to log into it. This is the first page it brings you to, which is just some basic information. You can see version of Gargoyle, the router's model number, and RAM usage and temps, and some other networking information. Probably not really going to use this page very much. This is cool though. This is your bandwidth usage. So up here you have a time frame. You can set it for 30 days, a year, 15 minutes. We'll do 30 days. And then down here you can set either total bandwidth, host name, or IP. Now if you go to use IP, who knows what you're picking here. But if you set up host names for your router, then that makes it much easier to see, and you use like some sort of naming convention that you can remember, which we'll be going over once we get to that section. It's much easier to see what you're picking. So Tony PC, that's this PC here. I got that one's going to be in blue. You got this one in red, which is TV Garage. And you got this one in green, which is my girlfriend's laptop. So then you can check to see how much bandwidth they've been using. So the red one, very little. That's the TV in the garage. I don't really use that very much. Let's go with TV in the living room. Let's see. So that one we use a little more. So you can see that one's a little higher peaks. And that's megabyte per hour, and that looks like it's actually yeah, that is megabyte. It actually spells the word out. Normally when you see like MBPS or the capitalization matters. So if it's a M and a capital B, it's byte. If it's a lowercase b, it's a bit. So when you see something like let's go 100 Mbps, that's megabits per second, or if you saw it like that, that would be megabytes per second. A little quick tip: bits versus bytes. Bandwidth distribution. Moving on then to this, and here we can see this looks. I think this might be the same as before, possibly not. If it's not, I can't really tell the difference, except that one's a graph and one's a pie chart. Here we can set the time, so months, and then we could just pick a month. Let's do March, display host names. And then you can see cat laptop used 32.4%. My computer used 32.4%. Living room TV used 22.5%, and after that it drops off substantially. Those are the three things that use the most of our bandwidth in the house. Web usage. I don't have this enabled, but this would be if you wanted to keep track of uh, the websites that devices on your network were going to, this would actually log websites and web searches down here. It's not really going to work with many sites because most sites now use SSL. So like if you go to Google, it's using SSL. If the website starts with this HTTPS, then it's going to be encrypted and it's not going to be able to log it here. So it's only going to work for clear text sites. So this would be good if you have a kid and you want to make sure he's not doing anything stupid or going to sites that he shouldn't. You could sort of keep track of what he's doing here as long as it's not using SSL, the sites that he's going to. Connected hosts. Here we have just a list of the hosts that are connected or have connected recently to the router. This one here is unknown, so I haven't named that one. I don't know what it is. Let's see if we can find out here quick. Do an OS scan on it using Nmap. Let's see if we can tell. No, it's not up. So it's not even on right now. So what I'm going to do is figure that out later. I'm just going to copy that MAC because I'm going to be putting it in a different spot later once we get to it. Connection list. Current connections. You can see it shows you the protocol, IP it's connected to, the port number, and then the device on the network. Moving on to connection, this is where your settings are actually going to be taking place. You can see that the firmware supports you to either put in gateway mode or wireless bridge repeater mode. This is the way that your router communicates with your modem. So you can see it's usually most ISPs use DHCP, I guess some use PPOE, or if a lot of business accounts, you'll use static IP. So those are just different ways to set your router to interact with your ISP. Here we got your local addressing information in subnet and DNS servers. It gives you a drop down. You can pick between these different DNS servers or just set your own custom DNS server there. And this is all your standard Wi-Fi settings here. You can pause it if you want to. It's just all standard stuff. This here DHCP, this is what I really want to talk about because this is where you can organize your network and just makes interacting with the devices on your network so much easier if you spend a little time to set up host names for all your devices. So here we have, this is where you would type in the host name. Here you type in the MAC address, and this you would have to look up on the device itself, and then here you would assign it an IP address. So the IP address I sort of organize as well because I just try to keep things in a certain place. So over here you can see the name of the device, IoT Wi-Fi Lite, and then all my IoT devices are in the 12x IP range. And these IoT devices I'll talk about later on restricting them, but all IoT devices are denoted with IoT. TV, all the TVs, looks like 3 TVs with TV dash location, garage, living room, office, all in the 13x range. And then we have the Wi-Fi extender, which I really don't use anymore, so I probably should just unplug that. Got the phones, my work phone, personal phone, girlfriend's phone, and then the servers, I got a Pi-hole. which blocks ads on the phones, and a media vault, an open media vault server. So I'll probably be making a video on the Open Media Vault server. It's running on a ROC 64, which is what I would run it on, not a Raspberry Pi. Raspberry Pi is not gonna be fast enough to run uh, a media server. It doesn't have true gigabit for one. Well, that's really the biggest one. You're gonna be streaming files and movies from it. You want a gigabit port on your media server. And the Raspberry Pi shares its Ethernet port with its USB port, and I believe it maxes out at like 300. I don't remember exactly, but a ROC 64 has true gigabit, so that would be the minimum single board computer that I would go with. There's definitely better ones, but ROC 64 is like the bare minimum you'll want for a media server. Well, I'll go over all that and more specifics when I make the video for that. And then all of our computers, my computer that I'm on right now, girlfriend's laptop, girlfriend's gaming computer, Kindle. Well, that's not a computer, but it just got added at that time, and then my laptop. So the reason why you want to do this is because not only like when you're looking at those lists and those graphs, it makes it readable so that you know what you're looking at. But when you want to interact with one of these devices, you're never going to remember this number 192.168.1.156 for your media vault. And you're going to want to when you're setting up your phone with like a torrent client or VLC or Kodi on like these TVs, you're going to have to put in your media vault server settings, and it just sucks to always have to remember that number. But here you can just, since it's got the host name and your router is doing DHCP, you can just type in media vault and it takes you straight there. It's nice. And so when you're putting in settings into other things like on your phone that need to access your media vault, you can just type media vault instead of doing looking up the IP every time and typing it in. Same for the Pi hole. Same for all these other devices. If I want to ping my girlfriend's laptop, I can just type in ping cat laptop and it pings it. So I don't need to remember the IP address. So I definitely recommend doing this. I think most stock router firmware has this capability now. Before, this wasn't very common in home routers, but I'm pretty certain most routers have this built in, and it's something you definitely want to take the time to set up. Alright, moving on, VPN. This is for if you want to have a VPN server on your router. I don't use this because all my services run off my Media Vault server. So this I just like the router to be doing DHCP, and that's pretty much all I use the router for. If I have other services I want to use, they get put onto the Media Vault server. So you could, though, if you wanted to, and you don't have a ROC 64 or a Raspberry Pi running it for you, you could put it on the router. Tor client looks like, I've never used this, I don't know how well it works. Tor server. Dynamic DNS. So this, if you have a VPN at home and you want to connect to it and you're on your cellular data, you're not going to know what your IP address is at home. So you're going to need a dynamic DNS service. Here is a big list to choose from. I'm not sure if they all work. I'm sure the big ones do. Sorry. I know DIN DNS is a big one. I'm sure that one still works. I'm sure No IP is another big one that still works, but you'd have to go to those domains and sign up for the service. I don't use it because I have I have my own domain, and I have a script on the Media Vault that updates that domain with my home IP address. So I don't need to use one of these services. Routing tables. I didn't do any of this. This was all done automatically. I don't mess with that. Wake on LAN. Here, if you have a device that's off and you want to turn it on and it supports Wake on LAN, you just hit Wake Up on that device and it turns on. All of our devices are pretty much on 24/7, so I just don't have the need to use that. Here's port forwarding. This is how you set your port forwards up. Set a description, protocol, from, to IP port. So yeah, I have a few port forwards set up, all going to my Media Vault. Almost all of them. This one's going to this computer here, which is Nicotine. That's a peer-to-peer file sharing program. But let's talk about these other ones. SSH Tunnel, which is going through port 443. Default is 2.2, but I set it to 443 in case I ever do need to tunnel out of a network and they blocked port 2.2. I can still get through using port 443 because port 443 should pretty much never be blocked because that's what websites use for SSL. So unless they're super strict, then you should almost always be able to get through on that port. VPN server. Oh, so this is kind of like a backup. I almost never use this. I'm almost always using my VPN server. Actually, my phone has a tasker script on it, so when I get too far away from my Wi-Fi, anytime I disconnect from my home Wi-Fi, it automatically connects to my VPN server. So it's like I never leave this network, and I always have access to all my servers, my media, my music. I have access to it all the time, no matter where I am. Plus, if I do connect to a McDonald's Wi-Fi, I am connected to my VPN server. I don't have to worry about somebody trying to hijack my connection or sniff out, the websites I'm going to. Although as everything does use SSL, it'd be very rare for that to be a problem. But anyways, there it is. Mumble server. Never really use that. Almost everybody uses Discord now, but it's on there. It's on the Media Vault, the Rock 64, and if Discord ever loses popularity, that Mumble server will be there. Connection limits, not much to say about that. And here we go, restrictions. So IoT devices, I have one rule, one active rule here, block IoT devices. So let's take a look at that. So this is the name of the rule, block IoT devices, only the following hosts. So it's only blocking this one and this one. And what are those? Well, those are MAC addresses, so I don't know off the top of my head, but we will go here and find out. So it's blocking Charlie 0 Delta 8, that is this Wi-Fi light. It is also blocking 7872, that is this weight scale. So neither the Wi-Fi light nor the weight scale can get onto the internet. And you don't want your IoT devices to have free range, that they can do whatever they want on your network, because they're built very fast in dev time and not much thought goes into the security of them. So all these botnets and things that are popping up are almost always these little IoT devices that have been compromised because they're not secure. They're very vulnerable. Security is an afterthought to the companies that make these things. afterthought if it's a thought at all. So you want to really lock those down, and you don't have to block internet entirely to them. You can set up a whitelist, but that would be the minimum. I wouldn't. I I would, if it needs to access like this weight scale, like might need to do an update. So maybe I whitelist the update server for the weight scale so it can do an update. But I would never allow it to have full access to the internet. The crypto ticker I don't block because the code on it is open source. I can see what it's doing. It's not a problem. But these other things, I know you're saying, well, if it's an IoT device, it needs access to the internet, but really it doesn't. Like this Wi-Fi light, it's still on the network. I can still control it. I can still turn it on and off locally. It doesn't need to be able to connect to the internet to do that. And yeah, you won't be able to turn it off when you're away from home. You won't be able to turn it on and off when you're away from home, uh, unless you have a VPN. So I do have a VPN, so it's like even when I'm away from home, it's like my phone is still on the home network, so I can still access all these things, even without giving them access to the internet. They still work. Some things, like I said, are probably going to need to have access to like an update server. So whitelist it, but don't allow your IoT devices full access to the internet. You're just asking for bad things to happen. I had a block Roku update. That is, I don't have a Roku anymore, and I do not like Rokus now because what happened. Alright, little story time. Here we go. This is going to be a long video. I bought a Roku and I put an app on there that Roku doesn't like. I had to put the Roku into developer status. I put an app on there. Roku saw it, didn't like it, and then factory reset my Roku. So I go on my Roku one day and all my apps that I put on there are gone. It's been factory reset. So I didn't like that. So I tried to block Roku from accessing Roku's, and I managed to do that, but it was too late. So setting up the rule in this way, so I guess this is a little more advanced way to set up a rule as compared to this one, which is just block all internet for those devices. This one was the one device, which was the Roku, and it was allowing all internet. So this was a blacklist. This was just blocking any URL that contained this text here. So it was blocking Roku from accessing Roku servers. It was too little, too late, because they had already hardware ID banned my Roku from developer access, so I could no longer put those apps back on. I can still use the Roku as a regular Roku, but I can't put the apps on it that I want, so it's useless to me. So now we're going to block that host that I don't know what it was. Remember that host that was like 192.164.1.144? I didn't have a host name set for that, and I want to know what that is. Other than going around and checking and looking for a lot of different places for this device, I'm going to just add a rule that blocks it from accessing the internet. Oop. I set all hosts. So just this specific host. And so eventually I'm going to come across this device and it's not going to work. And hopefully I remember that I set this rule and I'll be like, oh yeah, now I can go and set the host name for this. If I forget, it's going to be a very frustrating 10 to 15 minutes before I remember why it's not working, but hopefully I will remember that and just log back in here, take this rule off, set a host name for that device. Alright, quotas. This you might use if you have a data cap on your internet connection. Hopefully you don't, but if you do, you could use that. It looks like to keep track of it. QoS, I don't use this either. But if you wanted to give priority to a specific device or protocol or even port, it looks like you could do that here. I don't use it because our internet is fast enough, and generally, if there is something that's tying up the majority of the bandwidth, it's like doing an update to a game or uh, downloading a torrent, then it's going to be over in 10 to 15 minutes. So you just bite down and bear it. And router access, here we go. So this is where you can change your password. Web access, you can set. I would disable remote web admin access. That's hard to say. I would disable that. You don't need to be able to access your router's interface from outside of home, and if you do, set up a VPN so that you can do it that way. You don't need to open it up to the internet. Here's SSH access, which you can SSH into your router. So root at router, type in the password. There it is. That's the router. I've not ever had the need to do that, and yeah, I think I'm going to just disable that because that's just a service that I don't use. I have that SSH tunnel on my Media Vault, so I just do not need that. I'm going to turn that off. Identification, host name of the router, domain, time servers, plugins. So this Gargoyle, I didn't install any plugins, it just came with all these plugins already. So you can see you can't even uninstall them. So it's just, they're there. They're part of it. Just reading through here, yeah, that Tor is a plugin, OpenVPN, USB printing. So let's go through them over here. USB storage. If you needed storage, again, all these services are going to be better served from like a Rock 64 running Open Media Vault. So that's the way to go. I wouldn't have your router do it. Have something that's designed to serve these services do that. Webcam, so you can plug a webcam in to it. USB printer, again, that's something for the Media Vault. For network printing, the Media Vault can take care of that. Backup and restore your configuration files, update the firmware, reboot, and that's pretty much it. That for Gargoyle. But now there are other firmwares. DDWRT is probably the largest, most popular and best supported, both in documentation and for the amount of routers that you can actually use with it. Then there's OpenWRT here. That's a very popular one. I think DDWRT is probably the most popular. There's Gargoyle, which is what I use. That can be got here, gargoyle-router.com. And let's see, tomato. That's for, oh, that's not how you spell tomato, and I probably got to type in firmware. There we go. So tomato. This is for older routers, I think. I don't know. It's I know it wouldn't. I like this one the best, and it wouldn't work on my router. So I think if you got a WRT54G, then this is what you want. Let's see what else. Looks like they have listings of other firmwares. DRT is probably the most well known and most used. I would check that one. It seems a little bloated for me. I like Gargoyle because it's super clean and lightweight, and that's the same reason why I like Tomato. But DDWRT is a good too, and that might have changed because I haven't used it for like 5 years, so that might have changed. All these things are constantly changing. So FreeWRT, I've not heard of that one. And it looks like it doesn't exist anymore. Hyper WRT Fibber. Looks like it's made from, yeah, the same people. Polar Cloud, because that's the same site yeah, that I'm on right here. Polar Cloud. Tomato, Polar Cloud, Tofu. Then we got OpenWRT, which I have there already. Tarifa. This looks like another one that's for older hardware. Linksys WRT54 and XWRT. Okay. Alright, so yeah, this looks like it's no longer. I can't read this language. It's pretty cool looking site. I don't know what it's about. Let's search. Maybe that's just a bad link. Where do we search Google? Search Google. Um, Alright, so maybe it still exists. At least it does here. They might just have the wrong site for it. It definitely is not it. Or maybe it is. I can't read what it's saying, but I don't see any pictures of routers here. Just these happy little symbols and circles. Interesting stuff. But yeah, it looks like XWRT exists here at this site, which is right there for you if you want to check it out. I would stick with the big players though, DDWRT or OpenWRT or Gargoyle if your router supports it. But yeah, check that out. Or if you're happy, if your stock firmware has DHCP and you can set host names like this, you might not even bother with an alternative firmware. But this is something that I think everybody should use because it makes just keeping track of your devices so much simpler and interacting with them much easier. So yeah, I guess that concludes the video on the Gargoyle firmware here. Hope you enjoyed it, and check in with my next video, which should be on the Media Vault server here. Alright, have a nice day.